What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of NewOrleans.Basketball. I am your host, Raphael Radler, joined by my fellow middle brother. What's popping with you? Garrett G Money Rap.
What up, bro? Everything's all good, man. I'm blessed. It's Thanksgiving weekend, man. I can't
Hey,
wait. I can't wait to eat the greens, the beans, potatoes, the gate. I need it
you
all. All
name it.
right. I need it all. You know what I'm saying? The NFL and the NBA gonna get to battling for who got, who has the attention span of the country. We all love of competition. It makes things better, apparently. We'll see. Um, the W just had their draft lottery
Mhm.
crazy because the Wings won it again, and everybody knows the star of the Wings is Paige Beckers,
Mhm.
and the number one prospect might be coming out, might be her girlfriend, Azzy Fudd, so out of UConn. So the W is just the lead that keeps on giving, man. I'm grateful for it, but man, look. Big shout out to the city of New Orleans, man. It was a rough weekend sports wise. Really like as a whole city, right. As we talk about who you lost to in sports teams, and what's the influx of stuff happening politically in the city, what was going on. But man, the city was beautiful. It was 9 times second line in Ninth Ward. Everybody knows that's the Ninth Ward holiday. It was beautiful to see the people out there, man, enjoying themselves, and there was no craziness going on, and it was just good to see the city kind of come out and love on each other, man. And it was good to see all that. I didn't personally go, but I saw all the pictures and people sending me videos and stuff. So man, big shout out to the city for doing that. And of course, you got Bayou Classic this weekend. So it's always something in this city, man. Always something to celebrate in this city. Just want to give a big shout out to my city for having a beautiful shake back after that awful sports fiasco. And then going right into man. Hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving, and Bayou Classic is safe as well. So everything's blessed on this side, man. How's everything on over there with you?
Everything is cool. Thanksgiving is a cool holiday for me. Typically, just because you get to your point, you get to get all the eats. Yeah, this week wasn't great. The Saints laid an egg in the dome versus the Falcons. The Pelicans laid an egg in the Smoothie King Center versus the Hawks. Vibes were low.
Let me tell you something. The NBA and the NFL need to get together and find a way to do this more often, to have
Mhm.
Atlanta and New Orleans or whoever, whatever cities play like the basketball, football, home and home in the same city. Because, man, let me tell you, I have been to a lot of regular season Pelicans games in the Smoothie King Center. I have seen a lot of basketball in that building. I have very rarely felt the electric in the air the night, that Saturday night before the Falcons played here on Sunday. That was an insane atmosphere. There was some beef going on in there. There was a whole Atlanta chant, ATL chant, the them versus us thing that the
Mhm.
Saints do. The Pelicans kind of did a version of it with Theo. Shout out to Theo. So it was insane. That was pretty cool to see that kind of, that you don't really get that beef in basketball, like
Mhm.
talking about it with New Orleans and Atlanta. It's always there for the football. It's going to always be there for the NFL teams. But it was so cool to kind of see that kind of spill over
Mhm.
into the Smoothie King Center. And of course, the Pelicans lost that game. It was not great, especially to see Noah Dyson up there running up and down the
Mhm.
floor. But it was cool to just to feel that kind of atmosphere and feel that electricity in there. I think the Smoothie King Center needed a little wake up, a little shake up like that.
I think the problem, I love what you're saying. I think the problem with that is I think Atlanta and New Orleans are very unique in that they're both centrally located. There's a lot of history between them, sports wise, city wise, people wise, whatever, and that fits. Versus, like, think about, like, okay, maybe like the Celtics and the Lakers, maybe like the Patriots and like the Rams. So it's kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Atlanta just has unique ties just in the South to their teams. But I do agree with you. The NBA should look into any way to just kind of rev up a random 17th game of the season rivalry between two teams. So before we get too far into, the Pelicans did get a win. Shout out to them. Make sure you guys are following us on Twitter, on X, on IG, on TikTok. That's No Basketball, No E. Make sure you're liking the episode below. If you're not locked in with already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So before we just talk about last night's win, and again, you got to document it because the Pelicans have only had 3. Shout out to them for winning the thanks to New Orleans sports to get the 3 wins on the season, you got to talk about the injury. So you just talked about it. You alluded to it. The Pelicans, after playing in Dallas, leading the majority of the game, blow a game that they should have had and they should have won when they had Zion back, and Derek Queen is now reintroduced into this group of rotation players under James Borrego. You lose that one. You go to the Hawks. Zion doesn't play the second night to a back-to-back. I think anyone who watches the Pelicans would have guessed that Zion was not going to play the second night of a back-to-back. And immediately, Garrick, it was like they lost all powers, all things that they had figured out from the previous games. Like, I was in the building versus the Mavericks, and just the fluidity of the offense looked like something not only you haven't seen from this season, but you haven't seen from the Pelicans in a long time. Like, even when Brandon Ingram was here, and shout out to Brandon Ingram and what he's been able to achieve so far in Toronto. But even when he was here, it never felt like the offense was super fluid, and it didn't feel like people were playing off one another. And yeah, they had like explosive games, but it also always felt like your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. Okay, Zion, sit down. Okay, now Brandon Ingram, you go. Versus like we're all going off in concert. And like the first half versus the Mavericks felt that way. Zion sits out versus the Hawks. All of that goes to shits, and you get blown out of the building without Trae Young. Zion returns versus the Bulls. So, again, you were wondering how many minutes we would play. He talked about, his frustrations with the minutes restrictions and what the Pelicans are doing there. But you don't have Herb Jones, who has a calf injury, who will be out at least for the next 7 to 10 days. Who knows? Karlo Matkovic also has a right calf strain that no one has really talked about, who's been out for some time. Jordan Poole did get cleared for activity. I don't expect them to see him versus the Grizzlies, but I do expect them to get a practice or 2 in before he's back. So you kind of have to check the injury report. But right before the game, the Bulls announced that Nikola Vucevic is not out, who's been playing incredible so far this season, a big reason why the Bulls have gotten off to a good start. And immediately, I text you, like, this is one the Pelicans have to win. If they don't have their engine and you're playing in a win where you've got to get a win somewhere in here, this is the one. The Pelicans play a brand of basketball that's been just refreshing is the best word I can use as far as the Pelicans offense. So tell me what you saw from the game last night. The Pelicans pretty much led from start to finish. The Bulls made their runs, but the Pelicans kind of had them at arm's distance the majority of the game. What were some of the takeaways you saw in that victory?
Yeah, what up, Cold Chiller? What up, Tedra? What up, Jules? What up, y'all, man? Appreciate y'all popping in for this early live stream. So, yes, the Mavs game was very, very frustrating because exactly what you texted me about the Bulls game should have applied for that Mavs game, right? They obviously have Cooper Flag, but they're out Kyrie Irving, they're out Anthony Davis, and they're in a bit of a funk, right? And then you also had like Zion there. You had your full complement of players, and you played the type of basketball you would want to play for an extended period of time, right? And then all of a sudden, as the game went on, those third quarter demons pop up. You stop doing the things that were working so well for you in the first half, right? And you're not moving the ball. There's no, there's a lot of hero ball going on. And then as some people, step up and take more of an offensive, responsibility for James Borrego's new offense. You tend to forget about, the guy that's out there who was all, an all-star and all NBA and who's the max player and everything. And so you don't give him the ball. And so you lose that game in frustrating fashion. And then you come out and lay this egg against the Hawks, at home. Going into yesterday's game, I had similar sentiments. You like, this has to be a game that you have to win. Vooch playing. If Zion's gonna play, and you're gonna drag yourself out of this, can't be concerned about who's not playing on the other side and who's that. You have your as close to a full complement as you're gonna have. At any point in time, obviously you still mentioned Dejounte and Jordan Poole and Karlo Matkovic and Herb and all that. But you have Zion, you have Derek Queen, you have Trey Murphy, you have the fulcrums of an offense. You need to, and you have your offensive coach now. there needs to be some type of urgency to get in. And you saw it from the get-go, right? Like yesterday was one of the better like ball movement games for the Pelicans and one of the better effort games for the Pelicans. And it's crazy that like this is the conversation that we have in where we're like that's the hinge of if they win or lose, if they move the ball and if they play with effort, right? But like you look at it, like Jose had 8 rebounds. Like that's where the game is won when you're crashing the boards the way you're crashing it. And then in the and on the defensive side of the ball, getting into steals, getting into the passing lane, playing that aggressive defensive side, like that's where the game is won, right? And then as the game got closer, you saw the Pelicans finally do some of the things that they didn't do in Dallas to close that game out again. Learning under the team and learning under James Borrego. And I'll talk about some things that I like about from him. But like they started to give the ball to Zion, right? And Zion took them home. He got to the rim over and over again. And I tweeted before the game, this was a game, if you're going to start Patrick Williams at center against Zion, this has to be a game where Derek Queen and Zion immediately catch the ball and go towards the rim and live with the results afterwards, because there was no rim protection. There's no interior presence for the Bulls in that game. And so, you started to see it happen when the game got close. Zion just kind of put his shoulder down and went to the lane over and over and over again. And again, he's still not in where you'd like to see him and where he's going to be at probably as you play, right? You look at, we talk about the measures of the Pelicans. You can look at Zion, right? Zion had 29 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. So that tells me that there was some lineup things going on, but there was some effort things going on with Zion, because he should walk into 5-6 rebounds just for being where he is. But again, he's working himself back. He's on these weird minutes restriction. He can't play this game, can't play that game. So he still has some things to do to get back into his rhythm. But I think overall you saw the foundation of what James Borrego wants, right? Every time we talked about the last time James Borrego coached when Willie was here and Willie sat that game, there was the most points they scored in that season from that one game that James Borrego coached. And you're starting to see this more. The Pelicans had 100 points in 3 quarters and finished with like 140. Like that's just not something you saw this year. And that's without Jordan Poole and Dejounte Murray and Karlo Matkovic and Herb Jones. Like they were able to move the ball, get stops when you needed to. Obviously, it's not the greatest defensive showing, giving up that many points, but you got stops when you need to. And I just think it was one of the more, that was a James Borrego game in and of itself. And I think that's the kind of offense and that's the kind of lineups that he wants to play, moving forward.
I mean, the thing that I point to and the thing I look at the most is look at who you played, right? Chicago, they've outperformed their skis, let's say it so far this season. They've got a winning record. They really carried over what they did at the end of last season with Josh Giddey in the fold, and that they play up-tempo and they play with so much pace, and they're constantly pushing. Even after made shots, they're constantly pushing the pace. Well, it was clear that the Pelicans obviously worked on this in practice to say, hey, you have to push the pace just as much as they're pushing the pace against you, and you have to get back in transition. And what have we been talking about for this team prior to the season beginning? The things that make them best and when they're at their best is when they're playing in transit and they're playing with pace and they're playing up tempo. Yes, that's going to lead to turnovers. Yes, that's going to lead to some lackluster defensive nights. But, and we'll talk about this later, I don't know if the Pelicans have that elite tier of defense just as the roster is constructed this season. And so you're going to have to lend to your offense, but you have to play in a way where you've got such a young team that when the shots don't fall, that tends to linger on the defensive end. And then the game is, you're down by 20 and you're down by 30. Where in what Chicago does, look, if you make a shot, that's fine. We're getting the ball off the rim, and we are forcing the issue in another way so we can get easy buckets and easy transition points as well. And Antonio Daniel said it on the broadcast last night, and I couldn't agree more. Like, the Pels need to adopt some of that. Like, don't just because you played the Bulls, play super fast because you're adjusting to them. You need to say, this is who we need to be. Now, maybe not as frenetic all the time as the Bulls, but I think that needs to be a part of your success and a part of your identity as you move forward. So the Pelicans beat the Bulls and they improved to 3-15. They're 3 games out of the play-in, which is insane to me at 3-15. Like, if you look at the West, like everyone talks about the West being so dominant, and then I'm like, there's a lot of teams that, as bad as the Pelicans have started the season, are not that far away from the Pelicans at all in games and have played a much easier schedule up until this point. They're 8 games out of the playoffs, which I don't know. There's a lot of games left, but that might be tough. But like the play-in's still doable. So the questions you have to ask, again, you can't live from win to win or loss to loss just because there's so many. There's still 60 plus games left in the season. Is how are things trending and what direction are you moving? So you talked about it in the Dallas game. You have felt like the Pelicans had figured some things out. They got some practice time with their main guys. Yes, you're missing a lot of secondary and tertiary and an all-star on the bench who hasn't played but 9 games in a Pelican uniform so far. But in terms of like some of the main pieces of what your team needs to be moving forward, in the Mavs game and just watching it, and I was kind of listening to the fans and just kind of getting their 2 cents on what was going on in the game. And at first I'm like, man, who is Derek Queen? Who are these rookies that the Pelicans have low court? But at the same time, every time Zion touched the ball, you felt like a sigh of defeat from the Pelican or from the fans inside the AAC, because either he was going to score or he was going to foul out. One of the hidden talents that Zion has is that because of how uniquely he plays and how aggressive he is to the rim, you always have to put either your best player or your biggest player in action. And so he fouls players out routinely. He's only playing in 8 games so far, and Victor Wembanyama's fouled out. Nikola Jokic is fouled out. Jaren Jackson Jr. is fouled out. Like, Derek Lively had 5 fouls. Zubac had 5 fouls. Like, that is a part of you call it the run game. That is a part of what your strategy needs to be. And so when you take him out of the game or you don't give him the ball, you're then subjected to 19-year-old Jeremiah Fears or 20-year-old Derek Queen making the right play over and over and over again. And that's a tough place to be putting rookies in. And so like I look at like what they're starting to figure out. In the Mavs game, everyone had it going. You had 4 guys in 20 and was like, it's my turn when I get the ball, versus like, we've got a lead, but let's make sure we know where our bread is buttered and keep getting the ball to Zion. That didn't happen. You blow that lead. Najee Marshall hits the walk-off 3. In the Bulls game, the Bulls make their run. They push it back like they've been known to do. The Pelicans adjust and start getting the ball to Zion. Those are the like incremental growth areas that you're looking in. So I look at that aspect of it. I see it in the comments. Look at what Yves Missi like learned, I think, being on the bench, that, hey, man, you're an athletic force. No matter if they have a center on the floor or not, if they do have a center on the floor, you're probably faster than him. And if they don't, you're more athletic and taller than whoever that may be. So use that to your advantage. I think when you look at how the roster is right now, and if they ever get to a point where they're majority whole, I think that running the offense through Zion as your first option and then giving the ball to Derek Queen either off the bench or in some pseudo fashion with Yves Missi at center and then letting the offense go through him, I think that's your next identity, right? Because you saw in the Mavs game, the ball, Derek Queen was doing incredible things and everybody was ooh-ah. But then, like, you lost sight of Zion because it was like, hey, we found this new thing with Derek Queen. Let's try it. I think when you saw James Borrego made this adjustment in the Bulls game, when you bring him not necessarily off the bench, but Zion removes him from the floor, then it's like, okay, it's obvious that now we go to Derek Queen and things like that. And I think that is something that only works through trial and error and figuring that part out of who you need to be as a team. What are some other things that you think the Pelicans are starting to figure out as a collective? Maybe not personnel-wise, because everybody's still up and down, but just as a team.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I am starting to really like to see with this team is that the younger players are growing up in a sense of they're learning to let their floor be higher, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not at the beginning of this season, Jeremiah Fears was the darling of the show, right? And he was the guy that was setting the world ablaze and doing things on the floor. And then, Derek Queen kind of came around and then it was okay, like this is now the new thing. He's cooking, he's doing his thing. But if you look at like their games overall, like throughout as this progressed, as the fanfare and as all the like spotlight has left, like for instance, Jeremiah Fears, you still look and you're like, okay, he didn't have 20 points this game, but he had 14. He had 13. He had and 6 assists, or he had 3 steals, or he had 4 steals, or he had 7 steals. Like, they're finding other ways to contribute. And for guys that are, one is still a teenager and one is, still very, very young in his NBA and his basketball career, in his NBA career, like, it's good to see them finding other ways than the ways that are the glamour days. Jeremiah Fears can get to the lane. He's going to get better as time going, is finishing. That's something he did in Oklahoma well. He's going to be able to do that well. I think he's just got a little bit of that, man, these guys are fast and these guys can jump. And so he'll get better as time goes on. Again, 19 years old, but he can score. That's something that he can do. But the steals, the defense, the passing, the playmaking, the making the right decision, the hockey assists, like seeing him go for things like that, those are the things that I really enjoy watching him kind of grow up and mature. Same thing for Derek Queen. You come out and score 30 whatever points against the Mavericks. Of course, your head can get big and you can be like, okay, now it's time to run it through me. The Hawks game comes and goes by. You don't play well. He played okay, but the team doesn't play well at all. Then you come out against this Bulls team, and you're not. Yves Missi is playing over you. Into the fourth quarter, you could have been the guy like, all right, time to restore my value. But there was a bunch of times out there he got blocks. There was a bunch of times out there that he was looking off a good shot to get the ball to Zion for a better shot. I just like those things that are growing, with those two guys. And then another thing, and I see Tedra talking about Trey. I kind of like the fact that, now that Derek Queen has the ball and Zion is back. Listen, everybody, I talked about this a while ago with Derek Queen, with Yves Missi at Media Day, when he talked about spacing the floor and learning to shoot threes, right? And he said himself, I have to finish doing the things that I'm okay, that I'm good at right now, right? And I love that about it. Like, yeah, catch the ball and don't work on that. I know you can do it at a 70% clip. Can we get it up to 80, 85 when you're around them? Let's work on that more, as opposed to trying to overdevelop and shoot the three. And now you're kind of, hurting on the thing that you were good at. I think Trey Murphy, again, you wanted to see him progress and become the ball shot creator, the guy to, put the ball on the floor and do those things. And Trey, I think has leveled up a level to that. I also don't think that we needed to think that Trey Murphy was going to turn into Jaylen Brown or turn into one of those guys, because just because he's tall and can do things. I think Trey Murphy is best at play finishing. That is what he's good at. That is what he wants to do. And he's starting to get a little bit back to that. Now that you have Zion out there, you have Derek Queen with the ball, and Jose has become more, even more, trustworthy with the ball and making right decisions and doing things. And Jeremiah Fears he's starting to get, and you're going to be getting Dejounte and Jordan Poole back at some point. So he's going to have even fewer, ball handling responsibilities. I think that was great for Trey. Again, he had that great game against the Spurs, and he's starting to kind of pick up way from where he was at the beginning of the season. But I think what you're starting to see is him catching and being more decisive, shooting the ball, catching and shooting, or taking 1-2 dribbles and I'm at the rim, as opposed to here Trey have the ball and create for the offense. I think you're starting to see a little bit more of that. And just a final thing that I'm liking, I'm really liking some of these coaching things, these little niche coaching things that I'm seeing from James Borrego. I see somebody already talked about it. Jay Borrego called 2 timeouts coming out of the second quarter. Nope, not this game. Nope, we're not going to do that. Now, there are some things that I think he's still there. There are some lineup things and some. Do we have to go with this lineup right now? Does he have to play right now? There are some things like that I'm still looking at JB okay, he ironing some things out. People not available. Okay, fine. He's only had 1 or 2 practices with the team so far. He's still figuring some things out. But there are some things, obviously, that he is doing well. He's getting his team to push. He's getting his team to believe in ball movement now and things. And I think he has to tinker with things as they go. But I'm really liking the small coaching changes that you're seeing from James Borrego that you didn't see, with Willie Green. And I think that that just those type of things, those pushing different buttons at different times. I like the fact that he didn't put Derek Queen back in the game yesterday. He let Misi roll. I looked up and I saw he played 9 minutes, and I was like, oh, okay, like that's weird that he's not playing 9 minutes. And then like as I was like saying that, Ease came down and hit a putback dunk, and I was like, oh, okay. I see the way. Like that was the thing. Like, let him cook. If it's rolling, let him cook. And then when it's not, be ready to pull a cord when you need to. You saw that with James Borrego. So those are the 3 things that I'm kind of seeing that I'm like to seeing. I see somebody already mentioned it. We're gonna talk about some of the things that I don't like, which is now gotten to a point where I'm like, are we gonna have to have a once previously impossible lineup question to talk about? So we'll get to that.
Well, let's just get to it now. Listen, there are a lot of things. Again, you're trying stuff, and I have for someone who's been pounding the table saying try things and mix things up for the past several seasons, or the really green. I can't knock when you try something and don't work. Now, again, I don't know how many sample size pieces you need to see before you stop throwing certain lineups out there, but for the most part, again, I see somebody in the comments, you don't know who the starting lineup is nightly. We talked about this before. Outside of Zion and Trey, because Dejounte is not available, everybody else, it might be a matchup type thing until you find something that works. Especially, think about when you get to the playoffs, right? You get to the playoffs and you got different body types. You're going to be adjusting the entire time. And so, like, I don't think that you necessarily, yes, you want to find that 5-man unit that works the best. But I would argue you're not going to find that because Dejounte Murray still not played a minute for the Pelicans this season so far. So until then, continue to mix and match and motivate guys. Hey, I think, Ease is playing a little pissed off that he got pushed to the bench and things like that. And now he responded from him. And sometimes that's, again, if you've been around the game long enough, some of that is coaching, right? Making someone figure out this is how you need to be. And then the moment you stop being that, we're going to sit you down until you build some consistency. Now, to your point, something I'm starting to notice, and we talked about it in previous pods, Saddiq Bey is like that quiet storm that every time like things start to get close, like he had the ankle injury and he wasn't like shooting the ball well because he couldn't get lift in his jumper. And at now he looks healthier from there. He starts to hit that bucket, whether it's a 3, he had 2 of them, 2 huge ones versus the Bulls comeback last night, whether it's getting to the free throw line, whether it's just simply getting a bucket on the block on a smaller defender. Like he's starting to become that quiet presence. And so, Garrick, like we have to talk about it. Herb Jones is out with the right calf strain. And again, you don't want to play with that. Just look around the NBA right now. Everybody is on ice. So you're going to take your time there. But prior to that, Garrick, it was like the Trey conundrum. I see it in the comments, people saying, hey, Trey didn't regress, Herb regressed. I think both have had bad starts of the season because they've been put in bad positions. But anyway, Herb is uncharacteristically making awful decisions, whether it's with the ball in transition, going to the wrong place, whether the finish or whether the pass, whether it's like to shoot a contested shot with 15 seconds on the shot clock for no reason with Zion wide open in the post. Like it's just, it's so bad that it's like something is off. Like you see the injury coming out with him. And you wonder, like, maybe if some of that is kind of dealing with your confidence. Like, basketball is very much a mind game as much as it's a body thing. And when your body's not working, sometimes it messes with your mind. And, like, with Herb Jones, who's been touted and been recognized as such a smart player, it's not just the bricks that are the trouble. It's the decision-making and the shot selection that's like, what is going on? And so, like, him sitting down, I think will be good for him, both for health and from a mental standpoint. But we talked about this before the season. There's going to be a lot of situations where Saddiq Bey closes before Herb because he's just a better shooter than that. But now I'm at the point where, like, does he need to start in front of Herb, just depending on the matchup and who you need to defend that night? What are your thoughts on that conundrum that the Pelicans are in?
Yeah, man. Can you imagine that we having this conversation now? I mean, this is the podcast. What up, Bird Talks? This is the podcast, and I am the person who called Herb Jones a transformational draft pick. Right? Mm-hmm. I still believe that. What up, West Bank? Rick, happy Thanksgiving to you too. Yeah, man. I called him that. Like he he was the draft pick that people like talk about for years in your franchise, right? Like, man, can you believe they found Herb Jones and whatever the case is at that pick and hoopta. And now we're here and we're talking about like, should Saddiq Bey, who just got to the Pelicans this season, usurp him in the starting lineup? And it's not without merit, Raph. It's not like, listen, the thing that makes Herb and it's crazy that we call Trey Murphy and Herb, twins. They call each other twins, and we call them like the tethered twins of each other. And Trey is a conundrum, and now you have a Herb Jones conundrum because just go look at like Steph Curry's like last like 7 games, and you're gonna see 30, 30, 30, 7. 30, 30, 30, 30. And a 7 is from her putting on the defensive masterclass. All right. Mm-hmm. But then you also look at like his counting stats, and you look at some of the shot selection and some of the decision making with the ball in his hand. And you look at this offense that includes Zion, who's not a shooter, and then, if it's Eves out there, he's not really a shooter. Like DQ has like shot the ball, but he's not a shooter. Mm-mm. And so you start to see it get really difficult for anyone to operate if Herb is going to be, 1 for whatever on the 3-point line. And the whatever is more of the problem right now, because it's one thing to go like 1 for 3. It's one thing to go like 1 for 2. It's another thing to go 1 for 8 and 1 for like 9 and 1 for, because not only are you missing shots and hurting the offense because they're not spacing. There's not any spacing, and people are just like with you shooting whether you make them or not. But then you're like actively taking shots from people who probably could make those shots at a better clip. And so whether it's the injury, whether it's the mental thing you talk about, whether it's just Herb, trying to fit a role. Like before we started this season, we talked about like you were going to get the worst defender out the starting 5. And so you had to be the guy to be aggressive and make that guy pay instead of just sitting and watching other guys. But like, it's not, you're not doing that right now, right? Like you're not giving that, that important piece of element to the team. And so, it's a question. Like it's a question that James Borrego is going to have to look himself and ask himself and see if it's worth doing a change. You watched Saddiq Bey yesterday, and not only did he give Zion spacing in that 4th quarter, you talk about the shots that he made and going to the rim. There was a play underneath the rim where Derek Queen was taking the ball out. The Bulls were on a run. Derek Queen was taking the ball out. They were ball denying Zion and Trey. Saddiq Bey went underneath the rim, posted his little guard up. I think it was Ayo Dosunmu. And Derek Queen hit him with a pocket bounce pass right underneath the rim, went up, got fouled, 2 free throws, kind of broke the spirit of the Bulls on that play. That's smart basketball. And that's a bigger guy who can get to that spot and make a play out of something that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere, which we've seen a lot of for the Pelicans offense at times. And then he hits the boards. Like he had over 10 rebounds yesterday. So there's just a lot that Saddiq Bey brings. And I'm not saying that he's a better player than Herb Jones. And Herb obviously is a first-team all-defender. Should never, ever take that from him. He is one of the elite defenders in the NBA and will continue to be so once he gets back from this calf strain. But there is a feng shui line, a feng shui that you have to have with your lineup at certain times. And if Saddiq Bey is going to give you 60% of Herb on defense, but give you 110% of Herb on the offensive side, then that might be something worth discussing.
Yeah, I mean, I love this comment here about Jules because I couldn't agree more. And like you and I were just kind of talking about it last night. Herb is playing so poor on offense that like Micah Peavy, whose shot is still very much a work in progress, he gets in the game the last couple games and he immediately gets like 4 points, 8 points, 10 points because he's just using his athletic ability to either score in transition, cut at the rim, alley-oops, different ways. He's not a shooter either. Whereas like with Herb, he's like forcing himself to be a 3-point shooter, even though he's struggling. And I'm like, that again, that is so far beyond the IQ that Herb Jones normally plays with that right now he's just struggling. And to your point, Jules, like, yes, all three of them are supposed to be 3-and-D type players, but at the same time, they're all athletes as well. And so they should also be good cutters and find different ways to enable himself. And Herb's just not doing that right now. And so while he's dealing with the injury, again, the Pelicans just gave him a contract. I'm not saying Herb is going to fall behind Micah Peavy, but you really want to see him just balance his game out more, like Saddiq Bey and Micah Peavy as well. Now, you bring up, the Trey Murphy piece and, him being more of a play finisher and playmaker and things like that. I think putting Trey back into the spot that he's supposed to be in a catch and shoot type environment and then attacking closeouts is easier than just giving Trey the ball at the top of the key right now and clearing out and saying figure things out. And I think you're starting to see that by how the Pelicans are playing and how they're looking to find Trey Murphy. Like, let's not act like Klay Thompson didn't have a career of just catching and shooting, like literally no dribbling, nothing like that. And I'm not saying Trey Murphy is the player that Klay Thompson is or has that skill set, but there's still a way to be super impactful even if you don't have the ball. But it starts with the guys that have the ball. Now, I think in a very short amount of time, even through 18 games, you've identified two things without the majority of the playing time from these two players. You see exactly where Jordan Poole is going to fit in, because right now, all the threes that are funneling to Micah Peavy and funneling to Jose and funneling to the different cast of characters would be funneling to Jordan Poole, right? And we talked about him, and obviously he's got a huge fan base, and people think he's the second best player on the team and all those things. But I think at his truest, Jordan Poole can be the best sixth man in the league because he's so ignitable. And if he's playing off ball of Derek Queen and Zion, like, I'm excited to see that because I think that is the role that the Pelicans had for him. And I think that's the role that he's going to thrive in more so than, hey, Jordan Poole, go run the offense. I don't think that necessarily was leading to success to start the season. And so I'm interested to see once he fits back in. But the second part about that is like Jeremiah Fears, again, he's got the thing that I hope he learns sooner rather than later is that when he's got a step in transition, just go to the rim. Before the defense gets set, I trust you to make a good decision at the rim or to dribble the ball out. Too many times he's snake dribbling when he's got like a lead on the opponent, and I just don't understand why. Because again, part of putting rookies in situations that have so much talent in situations to succeed is that their shots, while they might not be as you may not want them shooting 20 times a game, they learn efficiency and they learn to take the shots that you're going to make. And those are ones that both ignite the team, but also I think are going to be easy buckets for him because he's so fast with the ball. That being said, like you saw James Borrego do it last night, and you alluded to it, like some of the decision makings. Every time I send you a text and I look at the rotation and the Pelicans just gave up 8 points in a row, and I'm like, who is on the court right now? Where is the scoring call? It seems like James Borrego makes an adjustment, or every time you get one of those runs that just seem lazy, James Borrego makes that timeout. Like he's constantly kind of got his button there. Last night, Jeremiah Fears, the Bulls are coming back. Jeremiah Fears takes 2 horrendous shots, just terrible shots. Like there's nothing better than a 19-year-old shot selection. James Borrego pulls him to the side, puts him right back in afterwards. Like, I think once you get Dejounte Murray back and he sees the balance of aggressiveness with your own shot, but also playmaking facilitator for others, I think that sometimes the best teacher is to be able to view it right in front of you so that when you step in the game, they have similar skill sets in terms of their downhill capabilities and their speed with the ball, that'll be something that Jeremiah Fears can say, okay, that's something that I can look at right now. Because like Jose is playing well. He had an awesome game last night. but like he's just a different player. Yeah, he's got the speed with Jeremiah Fears, but they're just different players in terms of their skill sets. I think Dejounte is a better a model of how Jeremiah Fears can play moving forward. The other thing you notice is like quiet as kept. Bryce McGowan's got multiple double-digit scoring performances off the bench. I texted you the other day, like everybody was looking at the Brandon Boston situation, and maybe his injury was a lot worse than people let out because randomly he missed the rest of the season last year, and now he's not in the NBA. But like Bryce McGowan's kind of like a variant of Brandon Boston Jr. Like he can score off ball, he can score on ball, he can get to the rim. So like when you need that punch versus like, here, Jose, go save us when there's giants in the paint. I think that's another piece you can handle. And so, like, all of it breaks down to, like, there's a lot of talent on this roster. And that's the frustrating part of it. We're talking about Micah Peavy, who's a second-round draft pick and the third best rookie of this crop. You're like, man, that's a good player. But the Pelicans only have 3 wins. So it's frustrating, and you can see it from so many angles. And again, I think the offense is going to get there, especially under James Borrego, especially with Zion being on the damn court. Like, I think the offense is going to get there. But it leads me to the defensive end. Because, yeah, the Pelicans scored 143 last night, but they also gave up 130 people. What are some of your highlight points? What are the areas where you could say this team can be better and has to be better? Because you ain't going to score 143 every night.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, this is a part of the Herb Jones conundrum, right? Because again, this is why you need somebody like Herb, who's first team all defense. I mean, obviously the Pelicans have given up points, before, but like AU DeSomnu shouldn't be scoring like 30 points on the Pelicans. Like he shouldn't be doing that. Like Herb just wouldn't have that. So I think like that's the conundrum you face when you have like you have, if you're gonna be a good defense, like you have to have somebody out there who's like, it is my job to play defense. It is my job. And I think when you look at the team and how it's constructed, I think to your point about it, this is one of those reasons why like holistic stats year to year are very interesting to me, but shouldn't be taken as Bible, like shouldn't be taken as law. Because like the Pelicans one year had a top 8 defense. And I said then, I was like, I don't know if that's like you had a really good year or if this is just like who the Pelicans are. And I think you've seen every year since they had that top 8 defense, like they haven't been the worst defense, but they haven't gotten back to those levels that they were that one year. And I think that this Pelicans team is more constructed to get stops when you need them, as opposed to like being this lockdown OKC defense. And it's not because they have bad defenders on the floor, because I think that like Zion's a good defender, and obviously Herb's a good defender, and Derek Queen hasn't been the worst defender. Like he's been decent, and then obviously you have guys like Micah Peavy and Sadiq Bey, like those are decent defenders. And then obviously bringing Dejounte Murray back. Now you have Jordan Poole. You have guys like Jordan Poole and Jeremiah Fears, who's more of a opportunity defender, right? Than a stand you up, lockdown defender. Like you have those guys, but like the team is just it needs to have so much meshed in it that you're gonna have guys who are gonna be able to be attacked on the defensive side. That's just who the personnel you have on the team, right? You look at OKC and why they're so good defensively. Like there's none of those guys you can pick on defensively, but also those guys can stay on the floor offensively because Chet can shoot threes, and Isaiah Hartenstein can operate in the dunker position and at the mid paint, and because Shay's like you can keep those guys on both sides of the ball. I think this team. I don't know if you're gonna get up there and be like, okay, this is now a great defensive team, just to your point earlier. So I think what this team needs to do and start focusing on more is try to get like stops, consecutive stops in like spurts in the game, right? And lean more into, can you get this offense going? Can you get up and down the floor? Because you saw it yesterday. Like yesterday was the most, it looked like the best Pelicans game. and it was aesthetically pleasing, both because they were playing the way that you envision this team. But if you go out there and you're like, okay, well, they scored 139 points, we need to lock up the defense. Okay, well then put the lineup of Herb, Micah Peavy and Yves Missi.
You went to 2K and press triangle and put defense
and see what happens, right? And see what happens with your offense. So like you're gonna always have I think where if you want to improve this defense at any point, it has to be individual increments. Trey has to be better defensively. Jose has to be better, stopping point of attack of guards. He's been good, but he hasn't been gambling the same.
He's been gambling too much.
A lot of gambling. Yeah, a lot of gambling. You have to, it has to be those individual increments, because I just don't know if the Pelicans have the personnel to be like, okay, we can put all these good defenders on the floor, and that we have, right? Yves Missi, Herb Jones, Micah Peavy. Like, you have those guys, Dejounte Murray. Like, you have defenders who can be out there, but they are not your source of offense, right? And so you're gonna have to sprinkle in Jordan Poole and Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen at center, and have those guys in there. And so they're gonna find, you just have to get opportunistic stops. That's how the Denver Nuggets won a championship. They were out there with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic and guys who like weren't the greatest defenses, but they would get stopped. Aaron Gordon and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would get stops when you need it, right? You had Michael Porter Jr. out there, terrible defender. You had 3 negative defenders and 2 okay to positive defenders, and won a championship that way. Obviously, Jokic be damned, but like, that is how you build a defense. You build a defense around teams that need to have guys who are good, great offensive players, good to great offensive players, and below average to average to defensive players. And so I don't know if the defense is ever going to get back to where we saw it and where we think it should be, but can they get opportunistic stops with guys that they have, PV and Yves Missi and guys like that? Absolutely. And I think if you can get up, if you're going to put 140 up on the board, it's going to be very hard for teams to do that every single game. And so if you could tweak the defense while not doing anything to this offensive philosophy that's going on, I think that's the best way to go. But again, you got guys like Jordan Poole coming back and guys who not, going to be stepping in and not the greatest defenders, right? Jordan Poole had a career year in steals last year, but he's going to be coming back and he's going to be playing major minutes. And so that's, your defense is just not going to get better. What it can do is you can get opportunistic stops and continue to move the ball and continue this offensive machine that you seem to found in these last couple of games.
I'm going to disagree a little bit. I will say, based off the personnel that's available right now, you're probably right. You just need to lean into your offense because you have mostly offensive players available. I do think that, like I've said from the beginning, as much as I love what Derek Green has shown so far, I think Yves Missi should start at the 5 because it gives you a different level of rim protection and a different ability to defend on both ends. Only, which I saw in the comments, if he's going to be aggressive and look for his opportunities to score and take advantage of his mismatch, especially when he has smalls on him. Like Micah tried to post up E. I was like, he don't need that. But if he's right at the rim, just throw a lob, that type of stuff, which I think gets highlighted when you have a point guard that's looking for that. And so the place where I disagree is I think that if Dejounte Murray is like 80% of what he is, putting a lineup of him, Trey, Sadiq Bey, Herb, whatever, / Zion, and Yves gives you a starting lineup that's both offensively a threat and also defensively a threat. And then from there, you mix and match your pieces so that you're never in a super low situation. Like, we keep talking about the 2 small lineups, like the Jose and Hawk or the Fears and Hawk or the Jose and Fears, like those. Once you get players more available, I think those need to go away because that's hurting you. Like, we talk about Karlo Matkovic kind of being more of a 4 this season than he is a 5, but he also has been able to guard wings and play bigger. And so that gives you a different way to play defensively. And he's a threat on the offensive end as a rim runner and a floor spacer. And so, like, there's different ways to supplement it. But what did we talk about prior to the season? The areas that we expected the Pelicans, if they were going to be any good, to be great in, and it's starting to tinker that way: deflections, steals, and points in transition. That's an opportunistic defense. I see someone in the comments talking about the Saints. I go back to that 2009 Super Bowl Saints team, right? The only one to ever win. That defense wasn't necessarily locking people down. Like, if you go back and look, they weren't necessarily locking people down, but they were getting picks and they were going to the house with it. That's how the Pelicans need to play, right? Like there are opportunities and they're getting better at it. I'll say that, where they're guarding the second and the third action and things like that, where they're standing guys up. Like Kobe White was doing the hezzy, and Zion was just like, where are you going? Right? Like they are getting better in that area. I think the biggest area, and I see this in the comments too, is that they just give up way too many wide open bats. It has nothing to do with you staying in front of your guy. It's literally just guys just running to the rim because no one got back on defense or nobody decided to guard. Like someone just forgot someone's open or you forgot who was your guy in rotation. Like that stuff needs to be ironed out, and that will make you better in defense in totality anyways. And some of that is just playing with different people and figuring it out. Some of that is playing with younger players and things like that. But to your point, I don't know if they have the personnel to be a top 5 defense, but they need to be a super top 5 elite opportunistic defense, because whether you're scoring 143, because the Bills are also a terrible defensive team, whether you're scoring 130 or 120, you can't keep giving up 122. Like you're gonna lose that way. Like it's inevitable regardless of how well you play on offense. And so they need to figure that out in some way. And I think they have the personnel to do it. How James Borrego is able to mix max the peaches will kind of tell to that. So Pelicans started the season versus the Grizzlies. Their next game versus the Grizzlies. Ja didn't play last game, so you know that means he's probably going to be available versus the Pelicans coming up. There's another game we talked about on our last show. Like, it's not so much right now like who's available for the team, because like Herb is out and Jordan Poole's still out and all that stuff. Now it's like, do you have the best player on the floor? Which, again, like if Zion's available, you give the Pelicans a good shot to be in every single game. That was the case before he got hurt with the hamstring. They were in the games. Like before they start getting blasted by 30, like they were in the games. Now it's how often is Zion going to outplay his competitor on the other end? And if Ja's available or Ja's not, I'm still looking at this game as a game that the Pelicans can win. So what are you looking at from this Grizzly game as the Pelicans try to build a little momentum?
Yeah. Ja was out the first game. Zach Edey was out the first game. He came back, but he left like last game. And so with a foot injury, I don't know if it's that same foot he was having issues with. So he might be out again. I look for the same. Like I look for the same things that you did last night. Like, can you get into the paint, 2 feet into the paint, and then make decisions out of there? Scoring into the paint, passing out to open shots. And continue to move the ball. I think, having Zion on the floor and having guys who can play, whether it's shooting, whether it's cutting, whether it's getting him the ball in different ways with Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears and those guys, I think that's going to allow them to kind of have waves of offense come in and out, because you can put Zion there and then, like you said, take Zion out and you have Derek Queen. You don't have to really change your offense a lot. Like, right, we talked about it on the last podcast about how the Pelicans you was talking about, could Derek Queen be the second best player on the team? And we were talking about how they're paid and how it changes, and you saw it yesterday, right? Like Derek Queen came out, he was the darling of the show. Yesterday, he was not the second in command. It was Trey Murphy was hooping next to Zion. And then, Sadiq Bey had 20 points and he stepped up and he was able to. That needs to be the mantra going forward. If it's Zion will stir the, get it going. And when you need a bucket, he'll do what he needs to do. And then after that, everybody play off of that. You run some offense through DQ, run some offense through Jeremiah Fears. Don't settle for shots. If they don't have their rim protectors in there, and even if Jaren Jackson is playing, he's a foul magnet. Go at his chest. Keep going. Keep playing downhill, because that's where you get the best. You get the best option for the Pels offense from. So I think this is a game that they should win too. I think the Grizzlies are in a weird space right now, but they're still very competitive, and they're an unorthodox offense. I think somebody needs to guard Cedric Coward right now, like immediately. I know he's a rookie. Need to be guarding him. Need to be guarding him right now, because he had his going out. Welcome to the NBA party against the Pelicans in the first game. So I think you can't let him catch you off guard coming into this game. But I think the Pelicans have the best player on the floor, and they have I think they have the better cast of players to be available, even with some of those guys out tomorrow. And so They should be able to feel confident going into this game. They got their proof of concept yesterday by playing, finally getting that practice in. They're getting their second practice in today. This is the proof of concept was yesterday. Bring that into the next game and start establishing this identity that Joe Dumars has been asking for since he got here, basically.
Right. And again, like, I echo everything you just said. The only thing I'd like to see, just because I'm a defensive guy, I just want to see it on the defensive end. Like, often they've shown spurts in this season where they look like they can lock up, right? And the defense leads the offense, and it's showtime in the Smoothie King Center. I just think that's going to be their calling card, along with, to your point, playing through Zion, right? And seeing, because again, like I tweeted out yesterday, Zion had 29 points in 29 minutes. I don't think he played well. Like, there was a lot of shots that I'm like, Zion normally makes that. Like, he did shoot really well from the free throw line. And it's crazy that my 7-year-old son is like, well, why doesn't Zion shoot more? Or why isn't he so good at free throws? Well, part of that comes with being a rhythm. If you're not on the court, and then when you are on the court, you have a minutes restriction, it's hard to get into a rhythm. And so as the game got on, he went more and more, got better and better rhythm. So now, can you pick up where you left off? I don't know how long the minutes restriction stuff is going to last, but I think in order for the Pelicans to find a way out of hell right now, they've got to have Zion on the court. I see it in the comments. They got to have some continuity of who we are going to be moving forward. It seems like they're starting to get the remnants of that, but it's always 2 steps up and 1 step back because then someone's not available, right? And so I'm looking at, while you have Zion on the court, how much do you maximize them? Can you get Jaren Jackson Jr. and all those guys in foul trouble and make the game simple from there, and then figure out who you are as a team moving forward? With that being said, what you got left for the people, Garrett?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. As someone who works at for a nonprofit that basically caters to all of the homeless services in New Orleans, there are a lot of people out here who are in need during this holiday season. If you can, give someone something, donate something, some time, a call or whatever. We need each other more than ever at this point in time. So from us to everybody out there, happy Thanksgiving. And hope you guys, have that love and commitment from y'all families. As always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_Basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your socials. Most importantly, subscribe to NewOrleans.Basketball. We'll see you guys in the next one.